Hello, I'm Dr. Doug Ritchie, and I'm going to spend a few minutes explaining to you how to apply for a Medicare DMA-post provider number, and also how to navigate through some perceived hurdles with being compliant with Medicare and providing custom AFO braces to your patient. So we're going to start with just an overview and basically explain why we're presenting this webinar. And it's really motivated by the fact that I continue to be astounded by the number of colleagues who don't provide custom AFO braces themselves to patients simply because they don't want to bother getting a DMA post provider number, or somehow have an impression that Medicare is too complicated and too difficult to bill for custom AFOs, when really it's just the opposite that's true. And in so doing, practitioners who avoid dealing with Medicare and AFOs are losing a great opportunity to provide a very valuable treatment option to patients, and also lose a significant income stream to their own practice. Basically, this is a educational webinar. It by no means is providing legal advice. The information in the webinar does not constitute medical, legal, or any other advice, and it's not intended to be a promise or guarantee by Ritchie Technologies regarding coverage or payments for products or procedures by Medicare or other payors. The presenter, me, Douglas Ritchie, DPM, as well as all my business associates, specifically disclaim responsibility for the results or consequences of any actions taken against the viewer or the provider who relies solely on the information presented in this webinar. We'll start out with just the general concept of do you need a Medicare DMA post provider number to provide AFO braces? And keep in mind that not all patients who are eligible for and would benefit from a Richie Brace are Medicare beneficiaries. About 50% of patients who receive a Richie Brace in this country are under the age of 65 and are eligible for reimbursement via other third-party payers or workers' compensation. Notwithstanding, the other 50% are Medicare eligible beneficiaries, and the reimbursement generally is quite handsome and quite worth the effort to enroll as a provider yourself. The provider the provider application is easy to get online at this website. It's called the National Supplier Clearinghouse, administered by Palmetto. And on this website, there's a simple tab to open for new supplier enrollment. On this website, there's a detailed guide, step-by-step, taking you through the process of filling out the application, as well as other steps to get your provider number. It's actually not a difficult process once you read the guide. And once you begin to fill out the application, you'll quickly learn that it can be done as a task that can be terminated if you run out of time and want to save your work product. You can come back the next day and finish the job. The overall time to complete the application is about 30 minutes, and much of it is done by default checklist that you simply go down and check the box and move on. Not a difficult process at all. Medicare itself on the CMS website has additional instructions as far as how to go through the application process in case the National Supplier Clearinghouse site doesn't give you enough information. Actually, both sites are very helpful, but it's on the NSC website that you'll actually access the application. There's basically 6 steps in the process. The first step you don't have to do, because as a physician, as a podiatrist, as a pedorthist or orthotist, you do not have to obtain accreditation. Accreditation is only required for storefront brace shops, storefront hospital and medical supply stores that are run by non-credentialed licensed healthcare providers. You do need an NPI number for each practice location to get your DEMA Post provider number. You will complete the application and pay the Medicare application fee. You have an option to monitor your application once you've submitted it. And finally, there's a requirement for a surety bond, which is again not applicable to podiatrists, physicians, podorthists, or orthotists. This again is only required for storefront brace operations or hospital supply stores or medical supply stores, not for healthcare professionals. Just to verify, on the Medicare site, it lists the specific description of the provider, in this case, a physician, a podiatrist, a podorthist, prosthetist, and it tells you whether or not you need to have an on-site inspection or a surety bond, and in each case, you do not have to do that. So the application itself and paying the fee are all you have to do. The fee presently is $631. You will quickly find that you win back that entire cost of the application with the very first Richie Brace that you dispense and get reimbursed for. To be compliant with Medicare requires essential elements in the patient medical record. We've gone to great lengths in the Richie Brace website to provide you with the essential steps for documentation to be compliant with Medicare. On the Richie Brace website, under the Billing and Coding tab, there are numerous documents that can be downloaded and stored in your own computer for reference so that you are Medicare compliant in not just your documentation, but in your actual billing. There's a general document here, how to be compliant with Richie Brace devices, that goes through the general process. One of the first issues and questions we are asked is what diagnosis code is used to bill for a custom Richie Brace? And the answer to this is quite simple. Use the code that's actually accurate and applicable to your own patient. If your patient is eligible for an AFO, meeting the medical necessity guidelines established by Medicare, you should use their true accurate diagnosis. You don't need to make up a diagnosis. In most cases, the diagnosis is quite apparent and quite relevant. To help you along, though, we would like to point out that Medicare describes to you what they're looking for. In their LCD and definition of medical necessity of an AFO recipient, billed and reimbursed by Medicare, the patient should have either a weakness or deformity, or should have a disease or injury. This says that Medicare is looking for diagnosis codes that document muscular weakness, structural deformity, an actual disease, or an actual injury to some part of the lower extremity. So if we look at that, we can come up with some suggestions of billing and coding the diagnosis. We suggest two diagnosis codes, one code that describes the disease or injury, and another code that describes a weakness or deformity. For example, posterior tibial tendon dysfunction is a rupture of the tendon of the foot and ankle, would use a diagnosis code 727.68. That's describing the disease or injury, but we also need to describe the deformity. So we look for this code such as flat foot acquired, 734. If this still sounds challenging, we've gone to the trouble to suggest codes under those two diagnosis categories, weakness or deformity, disease or injury, for each of the 6 common clinical conditions that Richie Brace products are prescribed. This quick diagnosis code reference list can be found on the billing and coding page of the Richie Brace website. You can choose codes from each of the categories, and of course, always consider adding codes that are applicable to your specific patient. Do not use codes that are not applicable to your specific patient. When you're performing your evaluation of the patient on the initial consultation, you may wish to use one of the checklists that we provide for you on the same coding page. This checklist allows you to pick certain codes and then later dictate it or enter it into the patient medical record. Another checklist reminds you to identify at least 2 reasons why a custom ankle-foot orthosis is being prescribed instead of a prefabricated. Medicare requires at least 2 criteria to be fulfilled in order to justify a custom AFO. In most cases, the condition requires treatment for more than 6 months, and most of the conditions treated with the Richie Brace are due to a need to control the ankle in more than one body plane. But there are other conditions, as you see on this checklist. You can use the checklist in your patient evaluation, but the actual findings from the checklist must again be entered into the patient medical record or narrative report. The template or checklist alone is not adequate documentation. The narrative section of the medical record is therefore critical. The checklist can be used for note-taking prior to entering the complete information into the electronic medical record or narrative report. The checklist or template should not be sent to Medicare. A detailed written order should be added to the medical record, which is developed after the evaluation, and it basically becomes the written order for the patient's actual AFO device. This is done in addition to filling out a prescription form for the fabrication facility who are going to fulfill the order for the Richie Brace product. The patient medical record narrative report is basically the progress notes as well as the initial patient examination findings. There are certain elements that Medicare looks for in identifying and justifying the medical necessity of the product, of the device for the patient. The key elements of the medical record for medical necessity to satisfy Medicare are found in this document, which is found on the Richie Brace website. And in this document, the elements of the medical record and specific examples are given so that the practitioner can follow this basic suggestion in developing the medical narrative report for each specific patient. You will note when you go through this document, whether it's for degenerative arthritis or posterior tibial tendon dysfunction, that there are common elements that appear over and over. For example, the practitioner should describe the weakness or deformity and to describe the disease or injury in detail. They should always add a phrase documenting that the patient is ambulatory and requires stabilization of the foot and ankle due to either loss of range of motion or deformity or whatever else is relevant to your specific patient. You should earmark and describe key points of your examination, either from gait analysis, the off-weight bearing or weight bearing evaluation. Include all of the salient findings relative to the patient and the justification for the AFO, whether it's for drop foot and hemiplegia, where you're describing in detail the gait, the drop foot, and the weakness, or an adult acquired flat foot, where you're describing the actual triplane deformity of adult acquired flat foot. Of course, each patient's progress note and medical record is unique to that particular patient, and these are general findings that are shown in the suggested elements, but are not specific to any one patient. So the key elements of the patient's medical record, therefore, should document weakness and deformity, should document that the patient is ambulatory and will benefit from AFO treatment, and then specific goals should be listed. The necessity of a custom AFO should be clearly outlined, including 2 of the 3 that you see here. The patient could not be fitted for a prefabricated device. There's a need to control the foot and ankle in 3 planes, or there is a long-term treatment needed for greater than 6 months. Finally, the medical record should document what date a scan or cast was taken of the foot and ankle for the AFO, and the date it was shipped to the fabrication lab, along with a copy of the specific prescription for the fabrication of the specific brace. Having done that, it's still recommended to fill in on this template what is known as a standard written order, SWO. Very simple, has the patient's name, the physician's name, the date of order, which is really the start date, the date it was casted and shipped to the lab, a detailed description of the item, and finally a signature and date. This should be kept in the chart and may be required or requested by Medicare later as part of a review process of the medical record. Once the patient has received, or the day of delivery of the product, that is the day of fitting of the Richie Brace, a document known as proof of delivery or a receipt is signed by the patient. The essential elements are the beneficiary's name, the address upon which the brace is being dispensed, a detailed description of the item, the actual name of the brace, any invoice number, serial number, and even narrative description of the brace, the quantity, the date, and the patient then signs the proof of delivery along with the date. It is also helpful if on the receipt or proof of delivery, the patient acknowledges that they received both fitting instructions and care instructions. This is a template for a receipt that we provide you on the Richie Brace website that has all of those elements already listed. Our website also has the fitting instructions, which can be downloaded and printed and given to the patient. The care instructions for the brace, which again can be downloaded and printed and provided to the patient. And finally, Medicare does require that you offer the patient a copy of the 21 Medicare DEMA Post Supplier Standards. In most cases, the patient is given this copy, but does not necessarily have to keep it or take it home. It just has to be justified that it was given to the patient. The patient is also advised that the provider does maintain a complaint log and that there is a process where patients can file a complaint regarding any aspect of DME service in that particular clinic. Moving on to a more recent problem perceived by practitioners or encountered by practitioners is the Medicare same or similar policy. This policy has actually been in place for over 20 years, but has received recent attention because of problems of embezzlement and problems of overutilization by certain telehealth companies that were providing multiple braces to the same patient via the internet and shipping quantities of 3 to 5 braces, usually prefabricated knee braces or spine braces, to the same patient. The telehealth companies were billing Medicare and getting paid for up to 5 braces per patient, which was a gross violation of the same or similar rule. So Medicare began clamping down on the rule, basically trying to enforce the fact that no single patient should get more than 1 AFO brace every 5 years. But like many policies, this policy is far too sweeping and actually excludes patients from care that they are rightfully entitled to. Many of you have read or become familiar with some of these fraud schemes of overbilling Medicare by certain companies providing AFO braces via the internet that has resulted in the clampdown and extra reinforcement of the same and similar policy. Now, the same and similar policy is described now in detail on all 4 of the Medicare DME MAC websites. All of the jurisdictions and carriers have a lot of information about the same and similar policy, what it is, and how to avoid getting a denial for a claim due to enforcement of the policy. For example, this is from the Noridian Jurisdiction D DME MAC website. It's explained in detail, and we have also gone to great effort to provide a detailed document which is available on the Richie Brace website, describing the same and similar, and also describing how to assure that you get paid and that you win an appeal in the case that the claim is denied. The same and similar policy is basically built around the premise that Medicare expects any AFO device to last 5 years of daily use. In other words, a device that's dispensed and begins to show wear and tear over a period of a year or two cannot be simply replaced and reimbursed by Medicare. Medicare says that the provider should repair or refurbish the brace, but Medicare will not provide a brand new identical brace in any period less than 5 years. Therefore, Medicare encourages repair and refurbishment of any brace previously dispensed within 5 years. If the brace has been lost or irreparably damaged, meaning it cannot be repaired, or if the medical condition has changed such that the current brace no longer meets the patient's needs, that patient would be eligible for a replacement brace in less than 5 years. But this is a little tricky, and we're going to take you through the nuances. Irreparable damage is similar to loss or theft and considered by Medicare to be a very rare, unexpected event, where in the reasonable useful lifetime, the brace has to be replaced in less than 5 years. But Medicare stipulates that irreparable damage refers to an accident or a disaster, such as fire or flood. Loss or theft of a lower extremity brace has to be documented from an accident report or police report. And so these are actually very extenuating circumstances that are not common. Irreparable damage, according to Medicare, is not the same as wear and tear from daily use. In the case of wear and tear, repair but not replacement of the AFO brace is covered by Medicare. 2 specific codes are used for either repair or replacement of a brace within 5 years of the original brace. Modifier RA is used when you are replacing a DMA item specifically due to loss, irreparable damage, or when the item has been stolen. Again, this is a rare event and requires specific documentation. Modifier RB, which is commonly used, is used when billing Medicare for replacement parts or repairing and refurbishing an existing brace. Medicare will pay for any repair or refurbishment of a brace during the 5-year period after dispensal, up to the full value of the original cost of the brace. The Richie brace is unique in that it can be refurbished very simply by the practitioner in the clinic setting. It actually can be done in 1 minute time, and the practitioner is paid for the parts and the labor. Any of the Richie Brace lab distributors can provide or can furnish a provider a kit that contains replacement Velcro straps and replacement limb support pads. These are the essentials, soft padded elements that tend to deteriorate over a period of a year or two of use of a Richie brace, but easily replaced in the clinic setting. We have a video on the Richie Brace website showing the refurbishment process with just simply removing the Velcro straps and replacing them. The brace looks good as new and functions good as new after this simple repair process. And as we show on the website, you use specific codes for the process, and Medicare will pay you for your time and labor. Now, in the case that you are providing a new, different ankle foot orthosis to a Medicare patient within 5 years, it still could trigger a same or similar rejection, because the same and similar description of AFO braces is widespread, is very global. Medicare considers all these L codes to be same and similar. It's basically every type of lower extremity brace, whether custom or prefabricated, that any podiatrist, orthotist, or podorthist would ever dispense in a typical clinical practice. Numerous codes, all of which are considered by Medicare to be same or similar. This is a travesty because these braces are not the same and similar. They're used for vastly different clinical conditions. They have vastly different scope of complexity and mechanical effect. They are anything but same or similar. None of these three braces are used for the same condition, and none of them are similar, yet Medicare considers them to be so. Efforts are underway to reverse this policy by many professional organizations. But until that change is effected, we must learn how to deal with it and follow the rules and get paid when the patient deserves a new replacement brace. For example, when a patient receives a walking boot, commonly done before a Richie brace is ultimately prescribed, the walking boot is used for the acute condition of pain and swelling around the joint to calm down symptoms. And then later, the Richie brace is dispensed as a long-term chronic management. Two different medical conditions, two different treatment goals, both medically necessary. The problem is when you dispense the walking boot and bill Medicare, you turn around and bill for the Richie brace, it will be denied as same and similar. The travesty here is that many medical conditions treated with the Richie brace require one or more AFOs, perhaps a walking boot, perhaps a plantar fascia night splint, perhaps a temporary brace to calm down symptoms. However, if the practitioner documents the unique need for one brace and then the next brace, they can get the patient reimbursed for the braces, but it requires careful documentation. So to navigate through the same and similar challenge, we recommend via our detailed document on the Richie Brace website, a 4-step process. Verify the previous brace usage by the patient, document why a new brace is necessary, empower the patient to notify Medicare that they want and deserve the new brace, and finally be prepared to appeal in the case of denial. The verification process will avoid a lot of heartache and surprise for both you and the patient. Fortunately, all 4 DME MAC providers have websites that allow the provider to go through a portal and verify any previous brace history for any Medicare beneficiary. So the verification process is described in detail along with links to the necessary websites on the document contained on the Richie Brace website under billing, coding, and same and similar policy. There are 4 jurisdictions that administer claims for durable medical goods for Medicare. The 4 regions have their own distinct website and portal that each provider should register on so that they can access the history of a patient in all 4 regions. Yes, you may have a practice in California and be treating a patient who lives in California, but they may have received an AFO brace when on vacation, perhaps going to an urgent care center in Florida. So it's a good idea to verify all 4 regions over the 5-year history to make sure the patient hasn't previously received the same and similar brace. So these are the 4 provider portals administered by either Noridian or CGS. And on each portal, the provider should register so that they can have access to the portal 24 hours a day to pre-authorize or pre-check patient eligibility and patient history of previous AFOs. Here's the portal registration site for jurisdiction A. And on here, you will log in or start a registration process, ultimately getting a username and password, which you can then use the same username and password, but you need to register on all 4 DME MAC sites. Once you've registered as a provider, you can go to the portal at any time and check beneficiary eligibility. You can even check the status of claims. And in our case, you can verify previous AFO utilization using the tab Same and Similar. On the tab, the provider can fill in the patient information, and then specifically type in the L code for the brace that you wish to dispense. The website will then link and show any same and similar braces to that L code previously provided in the past 5 years. So each of these websites has the information regarding their same and similar, and how to use the portal and how to go through the verification process, which takes at the most 2 minutes per patient per portal. The information you will get on the patient will say that either they've never received a same or similar brace, or they may have received a same or similar brace in the past 5 years. What's important, though, is to look at the type of brace they previously received and why they received it. If they had the exact same brace less than 5 years ago, the odds are Medicare will not reimburse for a brand new brace. In this case, we recommend that the patient sign an advance beneficiary notice and the patient pay for the brace themselves. More on that later. What is more common, though, is you will find that the patient received a different brace, a different L code brace for a different condition several years ago, but within the 5-year window. If you are prescribing a new different brace for a different medical condition, Medicare clearly states that the patient is eligible for reimbursement for a new brace. The fact is, all Medicare DME MACs clearly state on their websites that the same or similar AFO will be covered if the medical condition has changed. The same or similar AFO will be covered if the medical condition has changed, specifically if it's a new, different L code brace, not the identical L code brace. Here's an example from jurisdiction B, and here's an example from a CGS from their jurisdiction. They all specifically say that if the medical condition has changed, the beneficiary is eligible for a new brace. To fulfill this requirement, proper documentation is critical. On our website document, we tell you specifically how to document and what to document, and when and where you should use an advance beneficiary notice. We'll get back to that in a moment. But we have learned from several consultants and experience with patients that the patient themselves probably has as much power over this as the provider, because the patient can call Medicare ahead of time and ask Medicare to document in their records that the patient has notified them that they have gone to a doctor, they have a new medical condition and need a new brace, and they expect to be paid. They expect the brace to be covered. Medicare will document telephone conversations with patients, and that conversation will be linked to the patient and to the claim ultimately submitted by you. And in many cases, if the patient has verified that this is legitimate, it's not a telehealth scam, it's a true encounter the patient had with a true medical condition that they want and need a new brace, often Medicare will go ahead and accept the claim. So we give you specific instructions on what the patient should do in notifying Medicare ahead of time, and what the patient should do in terms of documenting the phone call and the name of the representative with whom they spoke at Medicare. Providing the exact same L code AFO to a Medicare patient within 5 years usually means the claim will be denied. What it basically means is the provider is providing an exact duplicate brace in less than 5 years and has decided not to repair or refurbish the existing brace. In this case, the provider is advised to have the patient sign an ABN and then tell the patient they will be having to pay for the replacement brace out of pocket because there's otherwise no medical necessity for a brand new brace. So other than change of medical condition, where a new brace can be provided, an ABN should be signed by a patient when the provider already expects the claim to be denied because of irreparable wear in less than 5 years of reasonable useful lifetime, where the brace is not going to be repaired or be refurbished. If the patient signs an ABN, the provider must append the GA modifier to the billing document. If the practitioner there does not have the patient sign an ABN, they always append the KX modifier, which deems the device is truly medically necessary and meets Medicare guidelines. So patients who have received a previous brace on the same or similar list may not be covered by Medicare in less than 5 years unless the medical condition has changed. The ABN does allow the provider to bill the patient for the replacement DME device, but really is to be used in those conditions where the new brace is really not medically necessary and Medicare is fully expected to deny the claim even through an appeals process. For that reason, ABN should not be used routinely on each and every AFO case by a provider, because in most of the cases, the brace is medically justified and the Medicare should be paying for the brace and the patient should not be paying for the brace. It's really in the condition where a new identical L-code brace is being replacing another brace in less than 5 years. The advanced beneficiary notice can be downloaded from the Medicare website, and there are links to this on our document in the Richie Brace website. It tells you how to fill out the document and tells you basically the conditions where the practitioner believes Medicare may deny the claim. Basically, the practitioner can fill in the box and say Medicare usually does not pay for this service, and they should specifically say why it's in violation of the same and similar policy. To summarize, you do get an ABN and use the GA modifier when the patient is getting the same L-code brace within 5 years of a previous brace. Do not use an ABN and do use the GX modifier when a patient is getting a different L-code brace for a new medical condition, despite same or similar brace in the past 5 years. Medicare, even though you've documented the medical necessity, the fact that you're providing another L-code brace, same and similar brace, within 5 years, the claim may get denied. But if it gets denied, by Medicare's own admission, that patient is eligible to get that brace reimbursed, and it will require the practitioner to appeal or request reconsideration. The appeal process is again outlined in detail in the document on the Richie Brace website. All DME MACs give specific instructions for appealing a denial under same and similar. Very well spelled out, very well demarcated, and focuses primarily on documenting the change in the medical condition that required the replacement brace. When the request for reconsideration or redetermination is put in, the provider must resubmit the standard written order, the proof of delivery of the brace, and then all of the medical record documentation to substantiate a change of the medical condition from the original brace. This should include the diagnosis, prognosis, duration of treatment, limitations, clinical course, and why the previous brace, same and similar, is not appropriate for the new condition requiring the new brace. This appeals process is not difficult. It's done online. And our experience is when a request for redetermination is made based on a change of medical condition, in most cases, the provider does gain reimbursement because Medicare clearly stipulates they will cover a replacement brace if the medical condition has changed. So just reviewing, you have to provide the standard written order of the brace that was denied, proof of delivery of the brace that was denied, and medical documentation comparing the previous brace with the new brace and why the new brace is needed. To request a redetermination or an appeal, specific websites for all 4 jurisdictions are available. And these links are also on the Richie Brace website. The process is done online. It's relatively quick. And according to Medicare's written policy, they should pay for a replacement brace in less than 5 years if the medical condition has changed, or in the rare case where the brace has been irreparably damaged, lost, or stolen. To summarize, not all Richie Brace patients are Medicare beneficiaries. The information previously presented in this webinar are specific to Medicare but are helpful in billing other third-party payers who often follow Medicare policy and requirements. Getting a DEMA Post provider number for the first time is relatively easy and streamlined online. Being compliant with your patient medical record following Medicare guidelines is actually following best practices guidelines, because the requirements for the detailed description of the deformity and the justification for the therapy is just good medical practice anyway. Keep in mind that the same or similar Medicare policy will reimburse for a new or different brace within 5 years if the medical condition has changed. Hopefully, what I've presented here is showing you that dealing with Medicare and getting paid for AFO bracing is not all that difficult. And when you do so, you will experience, and the patient can experience, remarkable outcomes with the Richie Brace that are specifically life-changing. Nothing can be more gratifying than watching a complete turnaround of a deformity such as drop foot with a simple Richie Brace intervention that forever changes a patient's life, and in most cases is reimbursed handsomely by Medicare. I thank you for your attention, and for further information, refer you back to the Richie Brace website, www.richiebrace.com, or to any of the authorized Richie Brace distributors around the country, most of which are listed on the Richie Brace website. Thank you very much.